Thank you, Barbara. Susan Ann is in County Tyrone as well. Hello.
Hello, good morning, gentlemen. I'd like to ask Mr. Farage about the EU Constitution. I think it's now called the Lisbon Treaty.
Lisbon.
Lisbon. I see it as devious and dangerous. It seems to me that Europe wants a super-state, and if they get their way, I fear Europe will behave like a dictator. And also, you mentioned about losing the core of our Christian faith. I speak as a Christian, and I would see that Europe threatens my freedom of speech as a Christian.
Yeah.
It appears to be pro-gay, pro-feminist, and probably pro-choice, which is a euphemism for abortion.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
where are you on the gay issue, Nigel Farage?
Well, I mean, it doesn't exist as far as we're concerned. All people are equal. We are not a religious organisation. We're a non-sectarian, non-racist political party. But your big point about this EU constitution and where might it lead in terms of our freedoms, you're absolutely right. I mean, listen, when they had the constitution, the French and the Dutch voted no, which should have kicked it into touch. And then what they did deviously was to rebrand it, rename it, repackage it as the Lisbon Treaty, and only one country had a referendum, Ireland, and they said no. And you know what I've seen in the European Parliament, in Brussels, and in Strasbourg when it meets there? I saw 499 members of the European Parliament vote to ignore the Irish result and to continue with the treaty regardless. And a big lump of that treaty is justice and home affairs.
They may well vote in favour now because of their economic woes. They might think that their polls indicate they might feel they're better off. Susan Ann, you make a very polls indicate. It's a suggestion merely. Susan Ann, you make a very interesting point about you worry about the secular nature of the European Union and the issue of abortion. Just explain a little bit more on that.
Well, as I said, I am a born-again Christian. I take the Bible seriously. I believe it from Genesis to Revelation. Genesis is the first book of the Bible. Revelation is the last book of the Bible. And I really bewail the state of this humanistic, secular society in which we are living. And I see Europe will do nothing to stem that, but rather it will advance it.
Are you? What's your stance on abortion, Nigel? Nigel Farage.
Listen, this is very, very important. A part of this treaty is what is called a Charter of Fundamental Rights, okay? And that Charter of Fundamental Rights, if this treaty/constitution is passed, will be judged by a European Court of Justice in Luxembourg. And therefore, decisions about abortion, decisions about gay marriage, decisions about all of these things would no longer be subject to our votes and a British government in a general election, but would be subject to the institutions of the EU. And it is an absolutely fundamental point.
That's a point about political structure. But
by the way, I do agree with you about the secular nature of the European Union. Mr. Buttiglione was an Italian Catholic, and he wasn't allowed to become a commissioner for Italy because of his Roman Catholic views.
Well, he had certain hardline views. What are your views on abortion?
My views on abortion? Well, I, like everybody, find it somewhat distasteful, but I most certainly think that I wouldn't have it banned completely. There may be a strong argument for bringing the weeks down towards the 12 or 16 level or something like that. I wouldn't ban it completely. I think if you do, like so many things in life, you force it onto the back streets.
Susan Ann, thank you for your call. And let's have Alan Wallace is in Dumfries. Now, we have to say, you're a candidate for one smallish party, aren't you, in the forthcoming elections? So put your cards on the table.
That's right. I'm a candidate for jury team. Jury team was formed in March of this year, and basically it's not a party because the Electoral Commission says it's got to be a party. That's a law. Basically, it's a support organisation for independent candidates.
Mm-hmm. What's your question?
My question to Nigel is, you're making some very powerful points this morning about Europe and some of the bad things about Europe. What I want to know is, what's the point of sending a UKIP MEP to Europe when MEPs have absolutely no power whatsoever to pull Britain out of Europe? The power to take Britain out of Europe lies in Westminster.
Well, for 10 years I've been going there, and for 10 years I've done everything I can at schools, universities, Rotary clubs, wherever, whoever will have me, coming on the Nicky Campbell show, and I've tried for 10 years, as a witness to what goes on over there, speak to the British people and to try to inform them better about what membership of this club means. And I'm cheered that we've had some success in doing that when I see a recent BBC poll that shows a clear majority of the British people now agree with our view.
There's things I agree with you, Nigel, and I agree entirely that we should have a referendum on the whole issue of being in Europe. And it's a question that's got to be put to the British people. That's one of the European principles of open democracy. But I do feel that sending a UKIP MEP to Europe is rather like sending a vegetarian to a steak dinner.
Well, the SNP...
Your role is in Westminster. Only Westminster has the power to take us out of Europe.
Come on. The Scottish National Party have been going to Westminster for many years, not wanting to be there, but they've been pretty effective.
Nigel, Farage, Monsieur Farage. Where does Farage come from originally?
I once thought it must be French Huguenot, but having investigated it more, I found no, it's actually a misspelling of Farage, so it's more English than I thought.
Okay,
so
that will have come to a huge relief to you. What do you...
No, look, I love France, and I love the French people, and I'm married to a German. I'm not anti-European. I just don't want my laws made by an undemocratic set of institutions in Brussels.
Let me ask you, what do you think about British military presence in Afghanistan?
One of my hobbies is the study of British military history, and it is very difficult, having read quite a lot about the Victorian era of British military history and on, to think that there's really much possibility of us walking away from there really with any honour. I mean, we can perform with honour, and I've no doubt that British forces are, but it's damn difficult to see just what the solution is. And
is that the front line of Islamic fundamentalism, Islamist terrorism? Are we right to do the right thing for
well,
the
it
people
may be that, but it's more than that, isn't it? Because, you know, whether it's Islamic or not, it's certainly tribal. It's difficult to define actually who the enemy is, you know, a problem that the British first encountered during the Boer War, and it's very... When you're lined up against each other wearing different coloured uniforms, that's one thing. But when you can't work out who the enemy is or isn't, then it's quite another. I'm just really worried, you know, what is the end game with this? Or do we think we have to be there for the next 50 years? I'm not sure we've thought this through.
Mark in Birmingham. Good morning, Mark.
Hi, Nicky. Hi, Nigel.
Good morning.
I just wondered why, in your opinion, we can't be British and also be part of this European thing, because... although I don't hold up the United States as much, they seem to do that quite well.
Yes, I mean, they've got their system of state government and federal government, and the relationship between the two, they've established and worked out over time. Incidentally, though, it cost them quite a big civil war to get to this position, and I hope you're not suggesting that we do that in Europe.
Oh, definitely.
Look, I want to be part of a Europe that cooperates together. I think the idea of the Council of Europe, where governments of Europe sit round a table and we can agree minimum standards on things, and we can come to agreements on the environment or whatever else it may be. I want to do those things. That is what good, sensible next-door neighbours should be doing. But the difficulty with this European system is it's asking us not to cooperate, but to give away the ability to make those decisions to somebody else forever. Now, as I said earlier on this programme, if that was validated in a national referendum in Britain, I wouldn't like it one little bit, but I could stop boring everybody, pack up politics and go back to the real world and get a job. But I'm actually in my heart I believe that if the British people were given this choice of do you want to be part of political union or opt for a cooperative structure with Europe in the future, I'm pretty certain in my own mind which way they'd jump.
Mark, are you impressed by Mr. Farage?
Well, I was quite impressed with the first part there. I want to be part of Europe. I wonder if you could...
No, I didn't say that. I said I want to be part of a Europe. Well, of course. Of course I do. Of course.
Well,
I mean,
isn't that, in a sense, what they may not do it the way you wish, but there's a European Parliament, as far as I'm aware. As far as I'm aware, it's full of members from 27 states who vote on things, and presumably the majority wins.
What we've got is a Europe that is run for bureaucrats by bureaucrats. They are the people with the sole right to make legislation and to repeal legislation. And to do that in defiance of the no votes in France and Holland and Ireland is a very dangerous, and I mean dangerous thing to do.
So you would only, in this cooperation that you're talking of, you would only ever institute new things if every single member agreed with it.
Of course.
Well, you wouldn't get anything done.
Well, that has been the argument of tyrants all through the years, that democracy is inefficient and it doesn't work, and therefore what we have to do is...
Should we work on that principle in Britain itself, just in Britain? Should we have
I would much
a referendum
rather,
on every single law, and unless we all agree, not bother?
I would much rather have a system where we had really bad governments making bad laws, but we had the ability to get rid of the rotten lot and replace them with somebody else with a different manifesto, than I would to entrust my future to unelected bureaucrats.